talking Dragonheart Vengeance, which is actually the 5th movie in the Dragonheart franchise. This one is directed by Ivan Silvestrini, and this one stars Joseph Milson, Jack Kane, and Helena Bonham Carter as the voice of the dragon. Now, spoiler alert, I kind of like this movie. I know these kind of films sometimes get a bit of a bad rap, but yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it. But let me give you a little bit of a taste of the plot here. So it focuses on this young boy whose family were murdered at the beginning of the movie, and he's like just a farmer boy, and he wants revenge for the death of his family. And the perpetrators were these 4 marauders, all of whom have kind of animal motifs. And he basically travels to to see the king, and is ultimately denied his protection. So he decides to take matters into his own hands and hires a mercenary. Along the way, he is advised to try and get the help of this particular dragon, which he approaches, and she is unwilling to help. And initially, inevitably, these three, this farmer, the sellsword, and the dragon, do team up to take on these marauders, but there may be a larger threat looming. So let's talk about why I like this movie. So I've got to say, this film had a lot of charm. One of the big things for me is I like likeable characters who you can kind of empathise with, who you can kind of root behind. And I got to say, this movie delivered on that. I found sometimes with certainly this series of movies in its kind of direct-to-video sequels. Obviously, this was originally based off a theatrically released movie with Dennis Quaid and Sean Connery. But some of the kind of characters on the latter ones have been a little bit paper thin. And although this movie is aimed at a family audience, and therefore the characters are, somewhat cliche, I nonetheless found centrally our lead protagonist here quite a likeable character. This young boy, I thought he was quite, affable, and you root for him as a central protagonist. Also, this kind of this vagabond rogue that kind of helps him as well. Again, a little bit rough around the edges, but I think it worked. And I actually kind of quite like the dynamic between the 3 characters them two and the dragon as well. Next, I would say, despite this being a family movie, this movie, I would say, is probably the most violent out of all of the Dragonheart franchise. Although there's no gory deaths on the scene, there are certainly more brutal combat to an extent, obviously within that kind of that family umbrella, I would say. But nonetheless, there are people who get killed, who are eaten, who have their arms chopped off, things like that. And we see a guy who's he's been scalped. So there is a degree of brutality that I feel is a little bit lacking in some of the, again, certainly the direct-to-video sequels. The movie also has a little bit of a different dragon. We have a female dragon voiced by Helena Bonham Carter, who this time is an ice dragon. Again, although that doesn't really kind of play a big part into it, they don't make a really big deal of the fact that she's an ice dragon. Nonetheless, it adds for a little bit of a kind of a different kind of dynamic. And the movie is a little less sappy, I feel, than some of the previous movies. I mean, there's still the conceit here where the dragon kind of shares its heart, but it's not as overplayed as it was in kind of previous films, and it's really not that much of a bigger deal in this movie. In actual fact, it plays very little to do with the actual story itself. I also quite like the villains here. I thought the villains here were all quite charismatic in their own right. They had a cool look and were quite fun. And then we had the reveal of maybe a larger threat. And again, I found it was, you can see the influences of Game of Thrones. Let me put it like this: based on obviously again a family film, but nonetheless you can feel the kind of the political machinations kind of going on behind some of the characters here. So there was a lot to enjoy for me. What didn't work? I've got to say, this movie can't help but try and make political statements in regards to because our dragon is female. Presumptions about the female, gender and everything like that. It can't help itself by having a little bit of, politically correct wokeness and all of that here, which may not bother some, but again, some people may not want that in their entertainment. Of course, I've got to say, I think the humour, again, this is where maybe the kiddie, the family stuff is a little bit kind of eye-rolling. Some of the humour here is a little bit juvenile. You know, we have the joke where there's a horse peeing on this guy's kind of luggage and things like that. And just the humour is a little bit kind of like weak at times. And then the acting from some of the characters, some of the cast here, is a little on the weaker side, if we're being completely honest. But nonetheless, I found this quite an enjoyable movie. I thought the fight scenes were well choreographed. The dragon effects for a kind of a medium budget straight to DVD movie were actually pretty good. I mean, I think people over-expect on certain films. When you have a low budget movie, you know, you cannot expect cinema quality CGI. They do find an excuse to sideline the dragon, which seems to happen in every single one of these movies. So the dragon isn't on screen for a lot of the film. This one they do it slightly differently to other movies, in this fact that this dragon can morph into animals, and so we have the dragon on screen, but let's say horse or a cat or something like that throughout the movie. And again, it saves the budget on having this kind of the dragon on screen. But when it is on screen, I've got to say, you know, yeah, it kind of looks CGI, but I think there's some shots I think it looks, you know, absolutely fine. And other shots it kind of looks, yeah, a little bit too CGI. But again, I can forgive that to a certain degree because we're not dealing with a mega budget movie. But what I did think was good was kind of some of the location and set designs here and the amount of extras. Because it does look like they have spent a reasonable amount of money on here, because there is, you know, vast kind of location shots and loads of extras, loads of people in costume. So it does have some scale to it, which obviously you appreciate, and kind of you get the sense that this is, you know, not just a few people that you do see in some of these low budget fantasy films. So overall, I've got to tell you, I mean, it's not going to be for everyone, but for this person, I actually kind of liked it, and I was invested in the whole movie. So I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10, and for my money, this is actually probably the best of the sequels. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? 7 out of 10 for me. Let me know what you thought. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.